For those of you that I have not yet met, I'm Jacob Deva Racusin. I'm wearing kind of two hats with my role here at BBMC. I am the Director of Sustainability and Building Science and co-founder of New Frameworks. We are a design, build, and fabrication worker and co-op in Northern Vermont. We're known very well for building structurally insulated panels, insulated wood, fiber, and straw. So that'll show up a little bit here. I'm also work with Builders for Climate Action. We do a lot of research in technical policy and standards research around embodied carbon with a particular focus around bio-based materials. And we're also developers of the BEAM tool, which is a material carbon estimation tool, which has a methodology established around biogenic carbon storage and includes a lot of bio-based materials. So both of that will be represented here as I share with you Biobased Materials Collective. And we are hot off the heels of a two-day summit, the first in-person summit we've had since our inaugural one 18 months ago. So this will be a brand new presentation that is mostly filled with photos from the summit. It's the best way we can explain how this organization is by showing you what we've just done this past Monday and Tuesday. So we started back in 2023 as the Northeast Biobased Materials Collective, focusing on the Northeast bioregion. And it came about because New Frameworks was trying to work with Mass Design Group, a nonprofit architectural firm, to supply them with some of our structural panels. And we're running into a whole series of various hurdles that were like system level structural problems that we're not able to solve just as individual firms working in the sort of the boundary of our project. And realized, okay, if we're really going to try to scale up the potential for bio-based materials in the built environment, we need to take a more of a systems level approach and work with a broader degree of industry stakeholders or composite of industry stakeholders to take a systems level approach to how we break down some of the structural barriers for scaling up these really important materials. So that was the initial thrust. We had a summit in person in Massachusetts that fall. Established a bunch of working groups based off of sort of a barriers analysis coming out of that summit, and then almost immediately realized that this was actually a continental interest. We had, I think, about 300 or so odd people from across Canada, the US, and even some Mexican representation. So we expanded our focus to be continental in scale. Over the course of the past year, our work really exploded. A lot of interest in bio-based materials has been building and building. So there are now over 500 of us across academia, AEC industry, policy folks, researchers, people from all up the value chain and distribution and manufacturing and agriculture and forestry that are all working together to try to solve these problems. And so that brings us up literally to today, which is right on the heels of our second in-person gathering. So it started with a field trip. We got a whole bunch of people on the school bus and drove around looking at the entire value chain behind New Frameworks production process so we can get people out of their urban environments and offices and actually get directly in contact with what goes into our products, which starts with a regenerative grain farm in the banks of Lake Champlain in northern Vermont. This is Dave Kenyon here in the yellow hat, who's an 8th generation grain farmer and gave us a really, really good in-depth understanding of the provenance of the straw that we use for our construction practices and how that relates to land use, land conservation, the economics of regenerative agriculture and small-scale agricultural culture in rural communities. So that was very enlightening. From there, we went to Clifford Lumber, which is a local lumber yard, 3rd-generation lumber mill, where we get a lot of our beam stock and trim material, and learned a whole lot about the challenges to smaller scale and regional logging operations, and particularly in the Northeast, and got a really good perspective again on sort of the culture and economics of the wood industry within our region and the benefits and the challenges of trying to survive in that scale of industry. From there, we went to our fabrication shop. This is some members of our team. I'm going to move very quickly in the interest of time, so I'm happy to answer more questions around any of the details, but a bunch of members of our team explaining how we go about building our panels. They're standing on a bunch of floor panels. You can see to the left and to the right some stacks of our wall panels and a bunch of straw bales in the back there. So we went through what our manufacturing process is like. Just to give a little more information around that, that's a look at one of these straw panels. From a mental model, you can basically think of a double stud box stuffed with either straw or wood fiber insulation. That we will use. The straw goes into the wall panels. We'll use the wood fiber in our floor and ceiling panels. We went to one of our in construction projects, and saw one of our small buildings being built, and then also went to one of our finished homes. So we sell our panels as a custom manufacturing for custom design and custom built projects to other architects and builders that are looking for panelized solutions for their projects. And we also have designed and built a line of 5 different small homes, from little ADUs up to 3-bedroom, 2-bath, pre-designed, prefabricated homes that we are sort of popping up in all sorts of places. The one on the left is the one that we visited, a little ADU as a little infill housing right in the city of Burlington. So folks got to see the whole realm literally from field to building on that first day of tour. The second day is when we kind of got into the information and the discussion part. So the whole morning was filled with a series of lightning talks. I believe these were recorded. I know they were live streamed across North America, and so those will be available for access. But we heard from, right now we're looking at Munkaila Massa from UMass Amherst, who's presenting on a bunch of really, really incredible research that they're doing, physical research, structural and environmental testing on straw panelized construction through their architectural and building technology labs at UMass. We heard from the workforce development folks and people in the trades. We heard from academics out of Columbia University. We heard from policy folks, some architectural representation, folks that have been building tilt-up panels out of hempcrete for multifamily constructions, of a whole range across all of our different stakeholders, sort of reporting back and seeding information about where we're starting from. I wanted to pause for a second because knowing the focus of today and the nerdiness of the CLF crew, I caucus with the CLF Northeast hub and spent some time working with the Vancouver hub as well. So Chris Magwood wasn't able to attend, but I represented research that he's done with his RMI team, looking very explicitly at biomass as a feedstock for residential construction in North America. That QR code up there, Building with Biomass, New American Harvest, is a phenomenal piece of research. I highly recommend it. And one thing that's sort of coming out of that research that we're finding is coordinating with some of the other work that's being done is to look at how we actually value the benefits of biogenic carbon. And just to be clear, a lot of the biogenic carbon we're working with is not necessarily long growth species like timber, but we're working with a lot of agricultural residues, which puts into sort of a different category of understanding the variables and counterfactual scenarios of what would have happened to that straw were it not incorporated into our panels. So starting to look at some cumulative emission mapping of what the actual value is for us diverting those materials out of waste streams or out of short cycle carbon cycles and storing them for longer periods of time in the built environment has been really interesting as we're trying to square that against some of the static LCA methodologies around biogenic carbon storage. We're also on a PCR committee that is looking at developing a PCR for rapidly renewable fibers. And this exact question around how do we develop methodology that fully reveals the value, particularly these short cycle biogenic carbon resources, can be quantified and made visible in the market. So some really interesting framing of static LCA is really good at counting the carbon and doing like a formal accounting with a +1 -1 methodology, but loses the temporal value of having that carbon be stored and really understanding what the value is from the atmosphere's perspective of having avoided that emission release over the lifespan of a building, again, particularly for a short cycle crop. So a good analogy around that is looking at money. You still need to have a ledger of your debts and credits to really understand how to manage your bank account. But the value of the interest and the time value of money is not well represented in that type of accounting. And so what we're identifying is that there's multiple different ways we need to look at this with a couple different methodologies to really understand the full picture around how best to utilize working with these bio-based materials. So figured I'd slip that in given the nerdy interest of this crowd. Moving on, so that was the morning, was a bunch of sort of information download and level setting and contextual information. The afternoon, we broke into a series of working groups sort of organized by the different foci. We had AEC folks hanging out. I was working with the manufacturers group here to do a little bit of barrier analysis, but really start looking at what's the in real-time solution stack that we want to be identifying for specific tasks and actions that we're going to be tackling over the year to come. Talk a little more about that in just a moment. Nice action shot of people enjoying a rare glimpse of Vermont spring weather and to try and capture some of our ideas. We wrapped it up with some of our working groups reporting back on where they are right now and the work that's coming ahead for us. And so this is if you're just learning about this crew and any of this sounds interesting, this is some of the work that's coming. We have great representation from within the academic community and research community that has working on a multi-step process of collecting basically a really well-organized and robust literature review of any relevant educational content relating to the use of bio-based materials, mapping buildings within the Northeast, sort of using that initially as a bioregion, but ultimately seeing value in supporting other bioregions to map their own architectural resources and case studies. And then some definitions around how to evaluate the quality of all of this material and incorporate it formally into an academic environment. And so they are doing some tremendous leadership on sort of bringing this into more formal academic and research-based environments. Another really big thing that's been kind of coming out of this group is a really strong interest in developing a trade association. And that was maybe the loudest thing that was coming out from the manufacturers group. Is the need for more formal organization representation of manufacturers and folks within the supply system to have better representation in policy spaces and market engagement. So you don't need to read all of this. I have it up here for reference for the future if you want to press pause and you're watching this on video. But there's sort of a host of different activities associated with sort of migrating from a sort of informal volunteer professional organization or sort of collection to a little more formality. And one that will be emerging, sort of spinning off of the collective is a formal trade association that'll be launching this year that will be sort of working in parallel with the work of the collective. So we had some reorganization if you've been in the collective and missed this and just looking to see what's happening. So initially we sort of organized pretty loosely in these 5 different working groups with a topical focus. We're now pivoting to working on very specific task-oriented groups so that you can join in to work on a particular task and particular area of focus, be able to define success when the task is done, and then reorganize as need be. So we're using a biogenic organizational model because that is so thematically appropriate. Of a rhizome. So the steering committee for the group is essentially this horizontal rhizome that connects the various different nodes of the plants, the areals being the task groups and the outcomes of these various task groups, such as some of the outcomes of the educational group that you saw. And then, of course, the roots are the members. So you can be involved as minimally, even if it's just paying attention to the work we're doing as you would like. Sort of moderately in being involved with a task group or even leading a task group if you have something you'd like to work on and get some support around, or even joining the organization, the steering committee as that becomes available. So if you want to join this fun, nerdy crew of multi-industry stakeholders to advance bio-based building materials, come join us. We are going to be having a follow-up to the summit, an online follow-up, Thursday, May 29th. 7 a.m. I'm so sorry, West Coasters. It was the time that sort of worked for everyone in the continent most closely. So grab a cup of coffee, wake up a little early. You can keep your video off and then tune into what we've got going on. If you want to join, send James Kitchen at Mass Design Group a quick email, or you can follow up with me and we'll get you on the list. That's it. Thanks so much.